Every year in the United States, millions of people walk out of their doctor's office with a lab result that says borderline or watch and wait, and they feel relieved. They shouldn't. Right now, 1 in 3 American adults over the age of 45 has blood sugar above the normal range and has absolutely no idea. Not because they haven't been tested, because nobody explained what the number actually means. Prediabetes kills silently. By the time it announces itself with real symptoms, your pancreas has already lost roughly half of its working cells. Half. Gone. Permanently. And the most infuriating part? Every single one of those cases was reversible. You had a window, a real, scientifically documented window, and most people never knew it was open. Your next routine appointment will not cover what I'm about to tell you. The system gets paid when you come back sick, not when you leave healthy. Subscribe to Dr. Waterling and hit like if you want the unfiltered truth. Help this channel reach 100,000 subscribers. We're building something the healthcare industry would rather not exist. Let's start at the beginning because the word itself is the first problem. Prediabetes. Say it out loud. It sounds harmless, doesn't it? Like a preliminary round before the real event. Like a warning label you can ignore until something actually breaks. I hear this constantly from patients. Doctor, it's just prediabetes. When I actually have diabetes, I'll deal with it. That exact sentence. I've heard it hundreds of times, and every time I hear it, I know exactly what that person's chart is going to look like in 5 years. Let me be absolutely direct. Prediabetes is a disease. It does not have the label that triggers a lifetime prescription. Not yet, but the biological process that ends in full type 2 diabetes is already running inside your body. The damage has already started. The clock is already ticking. Now let's talk numbers because you need to know these. Not as abstract medical trivia, but as tools that could change your life. When you go for a fasting blood glucose test, that means you eat nothing for at least 8 hours, then get your blood drawn in the morning. The result comes back in milligrams per deciliter. That's the standard unit used in the United States to measure how much glucose, sugar, is circulating in your blood. Below 100 milligrams per deciliter, normal. 100 to 125, prediabetes. 126 and above, diabetes. That middle band, 100 to 125, is the gray zone. The medical term is impaired fasting glucose. Plain English, your sugar is already too high, but it hasn't crossed the official diabetes threshold yet. There is a second test that matters even more than a single fasting measurement, and most patients have never heard of it. It's called HbA1c, or glycated hemoglobin. This isn't a snapshot of what your sugar is right now. It's a 3-month average, a built-in report card from your own bloodstream. Here's how it works. Glucose in the blood attaches to hemoglobin, the protein inside red blood cells. The more glucose in your blood over time, the more of your hemoglobin gets coated. Since red blood cells live about 3 months, this measurement reflects your average sugar level for the entire past quarter. You cannot fool it. You cannot fast for a week before the test and skew the result. It shows the truth. Normal, below 5.7%. Prediabetes, 5.7 to 6.4. Diabetes, 6.5 and above. If you haven't had both of these tests done within the last 6 months, stop reading this and set a reminder in your phone right now. Not tomorrow, now. Here's the scenario I watch play out in clinical medicine over and over again. A patient comes in, labs show a fasting glucose of 112. The doctor glances at it and says, "Let's monitor this. Come back in 6 months." No explanation, no plan, no conversation about what that number means or what to do about it. The patient goes home relieved because no prescription was written, and in our collective mental model, no prescription equals no problem. I'm a physician. I've been one for 15 years, and I'm not going to defend a system where it doesn't serve you. The average primary care appointment in this country runs about 12 minutes. 12 minutes in which a doctor must review your chart, listen to your complaints, order tests, update your records, manage referrals, and check off regulatory boxes. Explaining to you that a fasting glucose of 112 means you have up to a 70% chance of developing full type 2 diabetes within 5 to 7 years. Explaining that in a way that actually lands, there is simply no time for that. This is not malice. This is a system that is structurally built around treating illness, not preventing it. A system that gets reimbursed for your next visit, not for keeping you out of the office. The result is a predictable tragedy. The patient walks out calm. 3 years pass, then 5, and the same person comes back, now with a fasting glucose of 160, now with a diagnosis that will follow them for life, now with a prescription for metformin, a medication that lowers blood sugar, that they will take every day for decades. And the worst part of it, this was preventable. Not theoretically preventable, literally, clinically, scientifically preventable. How many people in the United States right now are sitting in that gray zone and don't know it? Research consistently shows the answer is approximately 1 in 3 adults over 45. 1 in 3. If you are watching this with 2 other people in the room, statistically, one of you has elevated blood sugar right now. And that person probably feels completely fine because prediabetes has no symptoms, no pain, no itch, no alarm. High blood pressure at least gives you a headache, you feel something and go get checked. But blood sugar, it moves through your body like a slow leak in the walls of your house. By the time you see the water stain on the ceiling, the damage behind the wall has been spreading for years. But here is the critical thing, the reason this video exists. Prediabetes is reversible, not managed, not slowed, reversed. There is a landmark study out of the United States called the Diabetes Prevention Program. It enrolled more than 3,000 people with confirmed prediabetes and divided them into groups. One group took metformin, the standard blood sugar medication, another group made structured lifestyle changes, and a third group did nothing. The results were remarkable even to the researchers who ran the trial. Lifestyle change, not a drug, not a surgery, not a supplement, reduced the risk of progressing to full diabetes by 58%. In people over 60 years old, that number was 71%. 71. Metformin achieved 31%. Lifestyle intervention was more than twice as effective as the medication. No pharmaceutical product on the market matches that outcome at that safety profile. Not one. So before we go any further, I want you to hold on to this single fact. Prediabetes is not a near normal variation. It is a window, a narrow, real, time-limited window during which you can still turn the biology around. Your pancreas is tired, but it is still alive. And if you reduce the load on it, it can recover. Not to the level of a 20-year-old, but enough. Enough to bring your numbers back into normal range. Enough to take the word prediabetes off your chart permanently. To understand why lifestyle intervention works so powerfully, you need to understand what is actually happening inside your body. I promised plain language. I'll keep that promise. Your body is made of trillions of cells. Every one of those cells needs energy to function. That energy comes from glucose, sugar, which enters your bloodstream from food. Every carbohydrate you eat, bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, fruit, cereal, gets broken down into glucose during digestion. So after every meal, glucose rises in your blood. That's normal. The question is, what happens next? Glucose cannot enter most cells on its own. The door is locked. It needs a key. That key is insulin, a hormone produced by the pancreas, a small organ tucked behind your stomach. Insulin's job is to circulate in the blood, find glucose, and unlock the door to cells so the glucose can get inside and be used for energy. When the system is working correctly, it runs like a well-staffed front desk. Glucose arrives, insulin opens the door, glucose enters the cell, blood sugar returns to normal. The problem starts when you flood the system. Imagine eating a diet built primarily on fast carbohydrates. White bread, white rice, mashed potatoes, sweet tea, fruit juice, pasta, crackers, cookies. Every time you eat these foods, glucose floods into your bloodstream rapidly and in large quantities. Your pancreas responds by pumping out large amounts of insulin. Over time, months, years, decades of this pattern, your cells start to become desensitized to insulin. They've had the key turning in the lock so many times that the tumblers start to wear out. Insulin shows up, tries to open the door, and the door no longer opens as easily. This is insulin resistance. The key is there. The lock is broken. Your pancreas does not give up. It compensates by producing more and more insulin. As if one key doesn't work, it will try 2, 3, 10. For a while, this works. The door opens with effort, glucose gets in, your fasting blood sugar looks acceptable on a lab report, but inside, your pancreas is working 3 shifts without a day off. It is burning through its reserves. Eventually, the beta cells, the specific cells inside the pancreas that manufacture insulin, begin to exhaust and die. Beta cells, once lost, do not regenerate. When enough of them are gone, insulin production drops below what the body needs. Blood sugar starts to climb, first to 110, 115, 120, prediabetes. Then, if nothing changes, to 130, 150, 170, diabetes. Here is the clinical reality that most patients never hear. By the time a person is officially diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, their pancreas has already lost approximately 50% of its functional beta cells. Half. Permanently gone. That is why diabetes management with medication is necessary, because you are now running a factory at half capacity and you need help. But on medications, you are managing a loss. You cannot replace those cells. At the prediabetes stage, the majority of your beta cells are still alive, exhausted, strained, working beyond their capacity, but alive. The lock is worn, but it can still be repaired. Reduce the constant flooding. Change what you send through the door. Give the system a chance to recover, and it will. Now let's deal with the myths. I want to spend real time here because some of these beliefs are so entrenched that even experienced clinicians accept them without question. Every single one of them causes harm. The first myth, prediabetes is basically fine. I'll deal with it when it becomes real diabetes. This is the most common thing I hear, and it is clinically the most dangerous. Doctor, my sugar is 112. When it hits 126, I'll act. You know what that sounds like to me? A person standing on a wet, slippery pool deck, seeing exactly how slippery it is and saying, when I fall, then I'll grab the railing. There is no logic there, only the very human tendency to respond to pain and symptoms, not to silent warnings. Here is the medical reality. By the time blood sugar crosses the diabetes threshold, you have already lost a significant portion of your irreplaceable pancreatic beta cells. You are not at the beginning of the problem at that point. You are well into it. Prediabetes is not a pre-problem. It is the problem. At the one stage where meaningful reversal is still possible. This is your last call. The door is closing. The second myth, my diabetes is genetic. My mother had it, my grandmother had it, there's nothing I can do. Genetics in this disease is real, and I will not pretend otherwise. A family history of type 2 diabetes genuinely increases your risk. That is a medical fact. But there is a distinction in medicine between risk factor and destiny. There is a very precise way to say this. Genetics loads the gun. Lifestyle pulls the trigger. I had 2 sisters as patients, both in their mid-50s, both with a diabetic mother. One was sedentary, worked at a desk, ate cafeteria food daily, mashed potatoes, white bread, sweet drinks in the evening. Her fasting glucose, 122. Her sister worked a physical job, walked 2 to 3 miles a day, ate lean protein and cooked vegetables. Her fasting glucose, 88. Identical genes, completely different outcomes. The genetic code is the map. How you travel it is your decision. The third myth. I already cut out sugar. I don't put it in anything. I hear this regularly, and it always leads to the same conversation. A patient comes in proud saying, "Doctor, I haven't had sugar in a month." I ask what they ate yesterday. Oatmeal in the morning with milk, white toast, pasta soup for lunch, mashed potatoes with dinner, white rice in the evening. This person removed the sugar bowl from the table. But for your pancreas, white bread is sugar, white rice is sugar, mashed potatoes are sugar, overcooked pasta is sugar. They are all fast carbohydrates, a category of foods that break down very rapidly into glucose in your bloodstream, causing a sharp spike in blood sugar and a corresponding surge in insulin demand. When physicians talk about managing carbohydrates with prediabetes, we are not only talking about table sugar, we are talking about everything that drives a rapid blood glucose spike. The sugar bowl is the visible 3% of the problem. The white bread, the white rice, the instant mashed potatoes, the processed crackers, the fruit juice, that is the invisible 97%. The fourth myth, honey is natural sugar. It's different. It won't cause diabetes. I have the deepest respect for honey as a food product. It contains trace minerals, antioxidants, enzymes. This is all legitimate. But from the standpoint of what it does to your blood sugar, honey is approximately 75 to 80% simple sugars, glucose and fructose. Your pancreas does not read the label. It does not care whether glucose arrived in a spoon of honey or a spoon of white sugar. It received glucose. It releases insulin. That is the entire interaction. A teaspoon of honey in your morning tea is not a disaster if the rest of your diet is reasonable. 3 tablespoons of honey per day on the grounds that it is healthier than sugar is self-deception that your pancreas will not forgive quietly. The fifth myth, after 60, elevated blood sugar is just part of aging. It's normal. This myth bothers me more than any other because it strips people of motivation at exactly the age when action matters most. Yes, insulin resistance tends to increase with age. Muscle mass decreases, hormonal balances shift, people typically move less. These are facts. But none of this makes elevated blood sugar normal. It makes it more likely if you are not careful. The clinical threshold for normal fasting glucose, below 100 milligrams per deciliter, does not change based on your birthday. Not at 30, not at 50, not at 75. If you are 62 years old and your fasting glucose is 117, that is not aging. That is prediabetes, and it needs attention. Old age is not a diagnosis. It is a chapter of life in which you can be healthy, active, and metabolically sound. Or you can accept decline as inevitable and arrive at diabetes, hypertension, kidney damage, and vision loss all at once. I've watched both scenarios play out in the same patients. The fork in the road is real. The sixth myth, and possibly the most dangerous of all. If my doctor didn't prescribe anything, treatment isn't necessary. In our deeply medicated culture, we have equated treatment with pills. No prescription written means everything is fine. This logical error is costing people years of healthy life. The treatment for prediabetes is lifestyle change. That is not a consolation prize for when medication isn't available. It is, as the diabetes prevention program showed, more effective than medication. Lifestyle change is the primary, evidence-based, first-line treatment for this condition. The reason doctors don't emphasize it more is not because it doesn't work, it's because it doesn't fit in a 12-minute appointment and it can't be written on a prescription pad. But a habit you build works continuously, every hour of every day, without a copay and without side effects. You cannot buy that at a pharmacy. Now we get to the part that actually changes things. 5 specific steps. Not 20, not a complete overhaul of your existence. 5. Because if I give you 40 recommendations, you will follow 0 of them. If I give you 5, there is a real chance that 3 become habits. And 3 is enough to see measurable results in 4 to 8 weeks. Step 1. Rebuild your plate. I want to start by removing the word diet from this conversation. Diet implies temporary suffering. 2 weeks of willpower followed by a crash, followed by guilt, followed by exactly where you started. We are not talking about a diet. We are talking about permanently changing the proportions of what lands on your plate at an ordinary meal. Picture your typical lunch right now. What's on it? For most of my patients, the picture is roughly the same. A large serving of starch, pasta, white rice, mashed potatoes, white bread, with a smaller protein on the side and maybe a token vegetable. That's the standard American plate as most people grew up eating it. All I'm asking you to do is change the proportions. Here's a simple model that works. Divide your plate mentally into 4 equal sections. 2 of those sections, half the plate, are non-starchy vegetables. These are vegetables that are low in their own natural sugar and do not cause sharp blood sugar spikes. Broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, cucumbers, tomatoes, bell peppers, zucchini, green beans, spinach, leafy salads, any leafy greens, eggplant, celery. Steamed, roasted, sautéed, raw in a salad, however you prepare them, they fill half the plate. One section, 1/4, is protein. Chicken, fish, eggs, lean beef, cottage cheese, beans, or lentils. Protein digests slowly and has very little direct impact on blood glucose. The remaining quarter, and only 1/4, is what used to fill the whole plate. Grains, potatoes, bread. And even there, you have choices that make a significant difference. Buckwheat, barley, brown rice, and whole grain bread have a lower glycemic index, meaning they break down into glucose more slowly, without the sharp spike that white bread or instant mashed potatoes produce. Does this mean you can never have mashed potatoes again? No. Have them in the quarter portion. Better yet, try roasted potatoes, because whole roasted potatoes break down more slowly than mashed ones, which means the glucose enters your bloodstream more gradually and your pancreas has an easier time responding. Soup is an important conversation because for many people, a meal without it isn't a real meal. Traditional soup in American and many other households tends to be potato and noodle heavy, served with bread. You can keep the soup, simply shift the ratio inside the pot. More cabbage, celery, green beans, zucchini, and legumes, less potato and pasta. The soup doesn't become worse, it becomes different. And in 2 weeks, you won't want to go back. I have seen this happen hundreds of times. I had a long-haul truck driver as a patient, 59 years old, eating on the road his whole career. His usual stop was a fast food window, mashed potatoes with a hot dog and 2 slices of white bread. We worked out a new system together. A thermos of homemade vegetable-heavy soup, a container of fresh-cut vegetables, and hard-boiled eggs. That was the entire change. 3 months later, 4 pounds lost, fasting glucose down from 125 to 111. He told me, "I thought it would be hard. It turned out it was just different." At your next meal, look at your plate honestly. If less than half of it is vegetables, add some. A serving of coleslaw, a handful of sliced cucumbers and tomatoes, some steamed broccoli. Start with 1 meal today, not all of them, 1. By next week, it becomes a habit and habits become effortless. Step 2. Move after you eat. This is the piece of human physiology that genuinely excites me to explain because it is so simple, so accessible to absolutely everyone regardless of fitness level, and so powerful in its effect. And almost nobody does it because almost nobody knows why it works. After a meal, your blood sugar naturally rises. You ate carbohydrates, they broke down into glucose, it entered your bloodstream. This is completely normal physiology. The question is what happens next. If you sit back down at a desk or lie on a couch after eating, the glucose circulates in your blood, waiting for insulin to be produced and move it into cells. Your pancreas works hard. The sugar spike is high and sustained. If instead you get up and walk for 15 minutes, even a slow, easy walk, something remarkable happens in your muscles. Working muscle cells absorb glucose directly from your bloodstream without requiring insulin. Repeat, without insulin. When a muscle contracts, it activates a specialized protein transporter, GLUT4, that opens a channel in the cell membrane and pulls glucose straight in, bypassing the entire insulin key and lock mechanism. Your cells fuel themselves directly. Your pancreas gets a rest. The glucose spike after the meal is blunted by 20 to 30%, and that figure comes from clinical research, not from someone's wellness blog. You do not need running shoes. You do not need a gym. You do not need any equipment. You stand up from the table and you walk around the block, around your apartment, down the hallway and back, to the mailbox, to the corner store and back. 15 minutes. Slow is fine. If your knees are bad, walk slower. If you use a cane, use your cane. The only requirement is that you are upright and moving within the first 30 minutes after eating. One of my patients, 73 years old, arthritic knees, very limited range, invented her own solution. After lunch, she walks around her apartment and puts away the things that have accumulated on surfaces throughout the morning. "Doctor, my blood sugar improved and my apartment is finally organized." I laughed for the rest of that appointment. Tomorrow after your lunch, do not sit back down immediately. Set a timer for 15 minutes and walk wherever you can. If this becomes a regular habit, you will see the change in your blood work within 4 to 8 weeks. That is not hyperbole, that is physiology. Step 3, take your sleep seriously. This is the step that surprises people most. What does sleep have to do with blood sugar? The connection is direct, well established in the medical literature, and almost never discussed in a standard appointment. When you sleep fewer than 6 hours a night, or when your sleep is poor quality, broken, restless, your body elevates levels of cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone produced by your adrenal glands. Among its many functions, cortisol raises blood sugar. The mechanism is evolutionary. Your body interprets poor sleep as a threat, and it prepares you for fight or flight by flooding your bloodstream with glucose, emergency fuel. Except you are not running from anything. You are lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. The cortisol rises, the blood sugar rises with it, and nobody comes to tell you. The research is blunt. People who regularly sleep fewer than 6 hours per night have a 40 to 50% higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes than people who sleep 7 to 8 hours. This is independent of diet, weight, and exercise. Just the sleep, just the chronic deprivation. Nearly double the risk from one lifestyle factor that most people consider outside the territory of metabolic health. There is a second layer to this. Sleep deprivation directly disrupts the hormones that govern hunger. Leptin, the hormone that tells your brain you are full, drops when you are sleep deprived. Ghrelin, the hormone that signals hunger, rises. The net result, you are not rested and you are hungry, and not for salad. Your body is specifically craving fast carbohydrates, bread, something sweet, something dense with quick calories. Exactly the foods that send blood sugar spiking. This is the sleep sugar cycle. Poor sleep creates carbohydrate cravings. Carbohydrate cravings lead to blood sugar spikes. Blood sugar spikes disturb sleep quality, which creates more cravings. The loop feeds itself. Breaking the cycle starts with consistency. Go to bed at the same time and wake at the same time, including weekends. Your body runs on an internal 24-hour clock called the circadian rhythm. When your sleep schedule shifts by 2 or 3 hours between weekdays and weekends, which is extremely common, those internal clocks desynchronize and sleep quality drops even when the total hours look adequate. Consistency is not a luxury, it is a metabolic tool. Cut caffeine after 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Caffeine blocks the brain receptors that signal fatigue. Its half-life in your body is approximately 6 to 8 hours. That means if you drink coffee at 6 in the evening, half of that caffeine is still circulating in your bloodstream at midnight. You may feel like caffeine doesn't affect you. You've adapted to its stimulant effect. But your deep sleep architecture is still being disrupted. The recovery you think you're getting during those hours is less complete than it appears. If you snore, if a bed partner has told you that you stop breathing during the night, or if you wake up exhausted no matter how many hours you spend in bed, please see a physician. Snoring can be a symptom of obstructive sleep apnea, a condition in which the airway collapses repeatedly during sleep and breathing pauses for several seconds at a time. The brain registers each pause as an oxygen emergency and briefly wakes you. You won't remember these episodes, but there may be dozens or hundreds per night. Untreated sleep apnea is one of the most potent independent risk factors for type 2 diabetes because it chronically elevates cortisol and keeps the sympathetic nervous system permanently activated. This week, try one specific change. Go to bed 30 minutes earlier than usual and take your phone out of the bedroom. Or at minimum, stop looking at it 60 minutes before you intend to sleep. The blue spectrum light emitted by screens suppresses melatonin, the hormone that initiates sleep. Replace screen time with reading, conversation, or simply lying in the dark. Small, boring, extremely effective. Step 4, learn to read your own signals. After 15 years of clinical practice, I can tell you what distinguishes the patient who reverses prediabetes from the one who slides into diabetes. It is not access to better food. It is not a gym membership. It is attention. The willingness to actually observe what your body is telling you, rather than waiting for something loud enough to be impossible to ignore. Prediabetes is quiet, but it is not mute. There are signals. They are easy to miss, easy to explain away, easy to dismiss as just getting older. Learn to recognize them. Persistent fatigue after meals. You eat lunch and within 30 to 45 minutes feel like you've been sedated. Heavy eyelids, foggy thinking, the need to lie down. This can indicate that your blood sugar is spiking sharply after eating and then crashing, which exhausts both your pancreas and your brain. The medical term for this pattern is reactive hypoglycemia, a rebound low after a rapid high. Increased thirst, particularly at night. When blood glucose is chronically elevated, your kidneys attempt to filter the excess sugar out through urine. This requires large volumes of water. Your body pulls water from its tissues and signals thirst. If you are noticeably thirstier than you used to be, particularly at night, this is worth noting. Frequent nighttime urination, waking 2 or 3 times per night to use the bathroom. This follows directly from the previous point. If this has become a consistent pattern and you are not on diuretic medications, check your blood sugar. Slow healing cuts and bruises. Elevated blood glucose impairs the function of immune cells and slows tissue repair. A small cut that would normally close in 3 days is still open and red after 2 weeks. This is not normal aging. This is a metabolic signal. Tingling, burning, or numbness in the fingers or feet, especially at night. This can be an early sign of peripheral neuropathy, nerve damage caused by chronically elevated blood sugar. Glucose is toxic to small nerve fibers in high concentrations. This damage begins silently and progresses before it becomes painful. The earlier it is identified, the more of it can be stopped. None of these symptoms alone confirms prediabetes or diabetes. But if you recognize 2 or 3 of them in yourself, that is your indication to get your blood glucose and HbA1c checked. This week, not in 6 months. The most practical tool you can add to this step is a home glucose meter. Also called a glucometer, it's a small device available at any pharmacy without a prescription, and the test strips cost roughly $15 to $30 per box. The test takes 30 seconds. A tiny lancet prick on your fingertip, a single drop of blood onto the test strip, and a number appears on the screen. Measure twice per week, always first thing in the morning before eating anything. Write the numbers down. After 4 to 6 weeks, you will have a personal data set of your own metabolic baseline. And here is what invariably happens when patients start doing this. They begin to connect their own data. Fasting glucose of 118 on the morning after white pasta for dinner. Fasting glucose of 94 on the morning after baked salmon and roasted vegetables. 112 after a large bowl of cereal. 97 after eggs with sauteed greens. This is no longer a doctor telling you what to eat. This is your own body in your own numbers showing you exactly how it responds. That transforms compliance into understanding. People make different choices not because they're told to, but because they can see the result. I once had a patient, a retired military officer, extremely methodical, who kept a notebook. What he ate, how far he walked, how he slept, and his mood rating. Every 3 months, he added his lab results. By the end of a year, he had drawn his own graphs. Blood sugar, trending down. Weight, trending down. Blood pressure, trending down. Energy, trending up. I told him I wanted to frame that notebook and hang it in my office. Step 5, eliminate liquid sugar. This is simultaneously the fastest acting step and the most underestimated. It delivers visible changes in lab results faster than any of the other 4, in some cases within 6 to 8 weeks. And most people never think about it because we think about what we eat, not what we drink. Let's calculate honestly. 2 teaspoons of sugar in a cup of coffee. 3 cups a day, 6 teaspoons. 1 teaspoon is approximately 4 grams of sugar. That is 24 grams from coffee alone. Add a glass of juice at breakfast, even freshly squeezed, even the kind labeled no added sugar, and you add 20 to 30 more grams of naturally occurring sugar in concentrated liquid form. Add a glass of lemonade, a sweetened iced tea, a sports drink at the gym, and by the end of the day, without eating a single candy bar, you may have consumed 80 to 100 grams of sugar through beverages alone. That is the equivalent of 20 to 25 teaspoons. The reason liquid sugar is particularly harmful to your pancreas is fiber. When you eat a whole apple, the fiber in the apple's flesh slows the absorption of the apple's natural sugars. Glucose enters your bloodstream gradually, a slow, manageable curve. Your pancreas handles it without a crisis. When you drink a glass of apple juice, the fiber is gone. Only concentrated sugar remains. It hits your bloodstream like a tidal wave, an immediate, steep spike in blood glucose followed by a massive insulin response. Your pancreas didn't see it coming. It had to react in emergency mode. This pattern, repeated daily over years, is one of the major driving forces behind insulin resistance. Not because any one glass of juice is catastrophic, but because the accumulated cumulative insulin demand from daily liquid sugar, day after day, year after year, is relentless. The practical change is simple and completely achievable. Start reducing sugar in your drinks by half a teaspoon at a time. 2 teaspoons in your coffee today, 1.5 tomorrow. 1.5 for a week, then 1. 1 for a week, then half, then none. Most patients report that within 3 to 4 weeks, unsweetened coffee or tea actually tastes better. The sugar was masking the actual flavor of the drink. You weren't tasting coffee, you were tasting sweet. Replace juice, soda, and sweetened drinks with still water, sparkling water, herbal tea, or water infused with cucumber, lemon, mint, or ginger. These options cost less than a bottle of juice and do not ask anything of your pancreas. Watch out for flavored yogurt drinks and smoothies marketed as health foods. Plain, unsweetened kefir or yogurt, genuinely beneficial for gut health and blood sugar regulation. A strawberry banana smoothie from a chain restaurant, up to 60 grams of sugar in a single serving. More than a can of soda. The word natural on a label tells you nothing about the sugar content. Read the nutrition facts. Look for added sugars and total sugars both. I had a female patient, 56 years old, desk job, healthy conventional meals. Fasting glucose, 122. We went through her day in detail. Her food was unremarkable, but her drinks? Sweetened coffee in the morning, 2 sweetened teas during the workday, a glass of juice with dinner. Approximately 50 grams of sugar per day. Purely from beverages. We changed only the beverages, nothing else. Same food, same exercise, same sleep. 8 weeks later, fasting glucose, 105. That is the power of this single step. Right now, add up honestly. How many teaspoons of sugar do you consume in drinks today? Coffee, tea, juice, anything sweetened. Write that number down. Tomorrow, reduce it by 1 teaspoon. 1 teaspoon per week, every week. Your pancreas will notice within days. Your lab results will confirm it within weeks. Now I want to talk about when lifestyle alone is not enough. Because knowing this boundary is as important as knowing the 5 steps themselves. If your fasting blood glucose stays consistently above 120 milligrams per deciliter, despite several months of genuine effort with nutrition, movement, sleep, and monitoring, that is a signal that your pancreas may need pharmacological support. There is no shame in this. A medication is not a failure. It is a tool for a body that needs help beyond what lifestyle can provide on its own. The mistake is waiting years, hoping and watching while beta cells continue to deteriorate. If your HbA1c is above 6.2%, I want you to see an endocrinologist. Not just your primary care physician, but specifically an endocrinologist, a specialist in hormones and metabolism. This level warrants professional monitoring and individualized planning. If you are losing weight rapidly without trying, not changing your diet, not exercising more, and the scale is dropping by 2 to 4 pounds a week on its own, go to a physician this week. Unexplained weight loss at this rate can indicate that your pancreas has lost enough insulin-producing capacity that your body is beginning to break down muscle and fat for fuel because glucose is no longer entering cells effectively. This is urgent. If you experience severe thirst, frequent urination, and profound fatigue, all 3 simultaneously, do not wait for your next scheduled appointment. These are the classic triad of diabetes onset. Make that call today. If you have tingling, burning, or numbness in your feet, especially at night, that is a potential early sign of diabetic peripheral neuropathy. The sooner you address your blood sugar, the more nerve function can be preserved. Time is not on your side with this one. And please, do not let fear of a diagnosis keep you out of the doctor's office. I understand this impulse. Many of you grew up in families where you didn't go to the doctor unless you were dying. With prediabetes, the entire point is to go before it's obvious. Going once now for 2 blood tests, getting a clear picture of where you stand, and walking out with a real plan, that is the intelligent move. Ignorance is not protection. Ignorance is just a way of letting the clock run without watching it. Let me tell you about one patient whose story I've thought about many times since. A 57-year-old man, mechanical engineer, factory job, married, 2 grown children, a new grandchild. His wife brought him in practically by the elbow because for 3 years he had been waving her off. Everything is fine, stop worrying. She kept pushing. She was right. His numbers at the first visit, Fasting glucose, 130. HbA1c, 6.2%. Blood pressure, 150/95. Weight, 225 pounds at 5'9". Cholesterol elevated. A classic portrait of a man who had been ignoring 3 years of signals. He sat across from me with his arms crossed and his gaze slightly to the side. I recognized the posture immediately. I'm healthy. My wife overreacts. I didn't lecture. I didn't run through a fear-based presentation. I said one thing. Let's be straight with each other. The way things are going, in 3 to 5 years, you'll have full type 2 diabetes, kidney complications, vision changes, permanent medication. But if you give me 6 months, just 6, we can try to turn this around. Without a drastic overhaul, without a diet you'll hate. Just smart, incremental changes, one at a time. He looked at his wife, then back at me. Okay, 6 months. We started deliberately slowly. Month 1, one change only. We removed liquid sugar. He was drinking 4 cups of tea a day with 2 teaspoons each, plus a glass of juice with dinner. Approximately 45 grams of sugar per day from beverages alone. We replaced them with unsweetened tea and water. Nothing else changed. Not his food, not his activity, not his sleep schedule. 1 month later, he had lost 3 pounds. He was confused. Doctor, I didn't do anything. That was exactly the point. You removed 45 grams of sugar per day from your bloodstream. That is what 3 pounds looks like. The simplicity of a first step often shocks people. Month 2, we added a 15-minute walk after dinner. He started going alone. Within 2 weeks, his wife joined him. Then a neighbor, then another neighbor. Doctor, there are 4 of us now. The neighbor said she also has elevated sugar. I smiled. Social accountability is one of the strongest drivers of habit maintenance. The walk became a social event, and that made it self-sustaining. Month 3, we rebuilt the plate. We didn't eliminate anything he loved. We simply added vegetables. His wife started making a large batch of braised cabbage and roasted vegetables on Sundays. Enough for the whole week. Always ready in the refrigerator. The portions of rice and potatoes naturally shrank because half the plate was already taken. No willpower required. The design of the meal did the work. Month 4, he suggested going to bed earlier himself. He had been on his phone until midnight or later every night, watching videos, reading news, 6 hours of sleep on a good night. He shifted his bedtime to 10:30. The first week was difficult. His body wasn't accustomed to sleeping early. By week 2, the adjustment was made. He came into his month 4 appointment and said, "Doctor, I forgot what it felt like to wake up rested. I thought this was just what getting older felt like. It turns out I was just exhausted." Month 5, he bought a glucose meter and started measuring twice a week, fasting every morning. He kept a log. After a week, he began to see the patterns. Glucose of 118 after white pasta. Glucose of 92 after buckwheat and grilled chicken. Glucose of 115 after toast and butter. Glucose of 90 after a vegetable omelet. Nobody told him what to choose anymore. He saw the numbers and chose on his own. That is the moment patients own their health. Not when they follow instructions, but when they understand the mechanism and act from understanding. 6 months. The follow-up labs. Fasting glucose, 104, normal. HbA1c, 5.6%, normal. Blood pressure, 135/85, meaningfully improved. Weight, 198 pounds, 27 pounds lost in 6 months. Cholesterol, within normal range across the board. He sat in my office holding the lab sheet for a long moment. Then he looked up and said, "You know what was hardest? It wasn't giving up the sugar in my tea. It wasn't making myself walk. The hardest thing was believing this was actually real. That I, an ordinary person, not an athlete, not someone obsessed with health, could control this. On my own, without a hospital, without IVs, just with my own 2 hands. That is the sentence I want you to take out of this video. Here is an important clinical fact you should know. After the age of 55, insulin resistance tends to accelerate at a faster rate, and the pancreatic beta cells that remain have a reduced capacity for recovery compared to younger adults. This is why the age at which you begin addressing your blood sugar matters enormously in determining how much you can reverse. How old are you? Write it in the comments. I want to know exactly who is watching this channel so I can target the information I share to the age groups and risk risk profiles where it's most needed. Here is your clear, actionable takeaway. Prediabetes is not near normal. It is a disease in which the damage has already begun. Damage to blood vessels, nerves, and kidneys, quietly, without symptoms, while you live your ordinary life. But it is the one stage where the biology can still be reversed. Your pancreas is strained, not gone. Give it what it needs, and it can come back. The 5 steps that work, and that have been demonstrated to work in the largest randomized trials in diabetes prevention history. Rebuild your plate. Half non-starchy vegetables, 1/4 lean protein, 1/4 whole grain or starchy vegetable. Proportions matter more than perfection. Walk for 15 minutes after your main meals. Not a workout, a walk. Muscle contraction absorbs glucose without insulin. Your pancreas rests. The effect on post-meal blood sugar is 20 to 30% and accumulates with repetition. Fix your sleep. Consistent bedtime and wake time, no caffeine after 2 in the afternoon, no screens in the 60 minutes before sleep, and see a physician if you snore heavily or wake unrefreshed. Chronic poor sleep elevates cortisol, spikes blood sugar, and drives carbohydrate cravings in a self-reinforcing loop. Track your numbers. A home glucose meter, 2 readings per week fasting, written logs, and a full lab panel. Fasting glucose plus HbA1c every 6 to 12 months. You cannot manage what you cannot see. Eliminate liquid sugar. Reduce added sugar in beverages by half a teaspoon per week. Replace juice and sweetened drinks with water and unsweetened tea. And read labels on anything flavored. This single change produces measurable lab improvement faster than any other step on this list. Do not do all 5 at once. Choose the one that feels most manageable today and do only that for 1 week. Add the next one the week after. By month 2, you will have 3 habits running. By month 3, the results will be in your numbers. Write in the comments which of these 5 steps you are starting with and your honest reason. I read every comment and I respond to questions directly. If you have already been through this, if you've worked with elevated blood sugar and have a story to tell, share it. The person who is where you were a year ago is reading these comments right now and wondering if this is real. Your story is the answer to their question. The system does not profit from your recovery. It profits from your next appointment, your next prescription, your next complication. I profit from none of those things. I'm Sam Waterling, and I've spent 15 years watching this play out in real patients. The ones who caught it early and reversed it, and the ones who waited too long. The difference between those 2 outcomes is almost always information. Information that nobody handed them in a 12-minute appointment. Subscribe to Dr. Waterling, leave a like, and help this channel reach 100,000 subscribers. We're building the conversation that the system won't have with you.